Being an African inventor is not for the faint-hearted. It's not for the weak of will, the lovers of comfort, or anyone who thinks trial and error is an optional part of learning. Here, it's more like trial, error, near-death experience, repeat.
For a few glorious seconds, Upendo is airborne, and then it crashes to the ground.
Forget your fancy Silicon Valley garages, stocked with coffee machines and motivational posters. In Africa, your workspace is more likely a tin roof shed, with the scent of rusted metals and hopes long overdue. You don't need motivational quotes, you need spare parts and a miracle. Let's start with the workshop, or should I say, the scrapyard that proudly calls itself a workshop. If you don't know how to weld, wire, and MacGyver your way around basic physics, you're already out of the race. African inventors are not born in laboratories, but in chaos. And being an African inventor, you have to be everything when it comes to inventing. You have to be the wiring guy, the welding guy, and even sometimes you have to be like a street kid, going around collecting scraps here and there, right? Like, take for example, Uganda's homemade convertible. Who needs a Mercedes or a BMW when you've got plywood, bicycle tires, and pure faith? These cars might look like IKEA kits assembled during a blackout, but they roll, sometimes uphill, if the passenger gets out to push. And one of the best examples where passengers get out to push their vehicles is the chukudu. If you've heard about the chukudu, it's an African-made scooter, and the chukudu is actually an original invention from Africa. I mean, for those of you who have never seen an invention from Africa, the chukudu is one. And the chukudu, surprisingly, was made during the 1900s. But 100 years later, or 120 years later plus, we still haven't figured out how to make the chukudu go uphill without much struggle. The chukudu is a perfect example of where the passenger and even the driver has to get off so that they can push their vehicle uphill, And I also think that the chukudu, it looks like something straight out of the Flintstones, it's not to discredit it, but given the years that the chukudu has existed, it's been the same. It's been like this ever since the 1900s. So I would have expected at least the chukudu to have advanced a bit. But you know what? This is Africa. As long as it works, don't mess with it, right? And also when it comes to the aviation sector, it gets better. In Africa, planes don't roll out of aircraft factories. They crawl out of backyards. Self-taught aeronautical engineers like Ethiopia's Ayubi Yilma or Kenya's Gabriel Nderitu have one mission: to prove that gravity isn't just a suggestion. And a person like Gabriel Nderitu, he's made over 20 planes. And the closest he's ever gotten to fly a plane is this.
For a few glorious seconds, Upendo is airborne, and then it crashes to the ground.
15 plus years later, and 20 planes later, this is how close Gabriel Nderitu came to flying a plane. And mind you, this guy was supposed to be a national pride, because during every one of his test flights, the media would follow him everywhere. People had hope. Even the whole country stopped. It actually stopped during his test flights to see him launch his planes. But this was his product. And the thing is, Gabriel Nderitu was actually, at some point, people came out and gifted him a proper plane engine. But even after Nderitu being gifted this engine, he still wasn't able to fly, right? Look at this kind of plane. Look at this plane.
He is no engineer and has no background in aviation engineering.
It's extremely heavy. The metal and it's using a Toyota NZD engine. I mean, the engine itself, leave alone the metals, are extremely heavy. You know, like what was he thinking? What's the thought process behind such a heavy thing that is supposed to lift off, right? And it has to be pushed.
Plane crashed seconds after takeoff at Kiwara in Kieni.
Right? And it had to be pushed for it to take off, but it didn't. So basically, Gabriel took 15 years, made over 20 prototypes, but never went anywhere. Right? And if you think that's it, think again. In Africa, before your invention ever leaves ground, you have to face things like lack of funds, you know, investors. Your biggest problem is investors. And I say that your biggest investor most of the time probably is someone like your grandma or maybe your mother, you know, and they too demand a prototype before parting ways with their goat money. So you have to build a prototype, and where will you get that money, you know, because you're so safe for investors. And another challenge that they also go through is bureaucracy. Even if you manage to craft a miracle, government officials will drown in paperwork faster than you can say, I believe I can fly.
A limited affair for Nderitu, even though he believes the sky is the limit as he pursues that dream even harder.
Because no government or no African country has wind tunnels. The places where planes are safely tested, it's a closed environment where you test your plane safely, you know, without injuring yourself and all that. There's no government in Africa that has that. So basically, approval in Africa for planes or for any sort of invention or craft doesn't exist. Approval doesn't exist. And the other thing that you have to face as an inventor is skepticism. It's your neighbors. Your neighbors won't cheer you. Oh no. They'll stand 3 feet away whispering, you're going to die, aren't you?
Now, but he can't, not until his dream takes off.
We really don't have high hopes in our inventors, because at the end of the day, these are the inventions that they create. So
A crowd gathers at Kiwara.
But sometimes you can't even blame the society, you know. And even when an invention is finished, it's rarely the fairy tale ending you'd expect. Your plane might be parked in the backyards for years, because getting clearance to fly in the African airspace is about as easy as finding ice in the Sahara. It's impossible. You never get clearance, even if it does. Look, for example, at Joseph from Uganda. Even though his plane managed to take off, it's used for display along a road. It's like some sort of tourist attraction, right? And it was so promising the day that it took off. I mean, it was so promising. Yeah. And when it comes to cars, your car might make headlines, but the roads will remind you that suspension isn't just a luxury. It's a survival feature. Because look at a car like this. It doesn't have any suspensions. Basically, it looks like a toy. And that's the case with many African inventions. They basically look like toys. Right? They basically look like toys. And one of the main reasons for this is because many African inventors don't have access to things like 3D softwares, right? Like AutoCAD softwares and all that. So they basically design their creations from their head. So before they even start making their creations, they don't have any blueprint. And if they are ever in a position to have a blueprint, it's basically just a rough piece of paper. That's as close as you come when it comes to blueprints. Because out here, 3D modeling software is basically impossible, you know, because for you to learn such softwares, you have to go to school. And, you know, in Africa, even our education systems, it's the worst in the world, right? But let's pause the sob story for a second, because buried underneath all these setbacks, Africa has what even Elon Musk's money can't buy. We have raw, unfiltered, and unbreakable creativity. You know, for you to go to a dump site and create something from that dump site, you know, I mean, it requires some sort of genius, you know. Look at this trash. Look at this. And this is where inventors get their you know, their materials to build whatever they can. I don't think that a lot of people, even me included, I don't think if I can create a car out of trash, you know, I mean, taking bicycle wheels and motorcycle engines and even bicycle steering wheels and creating a car. Sometimes even a plane, it's basically impossible. Yeah, African inventors don't just think outside the box because they don't even have the box in the first place.
For a few glorious seconds, Upendo is airborne, and then it crashes to the ground.
When the Western world sends its broken tech to die in Africa, which is mostly the case, like places like Agobloshi where tech is dumped by Western worlds, African inventors revive it. They rebuild it. They build something out of it and improve it. You know, sometimes they improve it. And all of this is done by nothing else but common sense and tools older than their presidents. It's not all grim and dark. Yeah, because, for example, a Ugandan built his first car before owning a license. So he basically built a car before knowing how to drive. Like, how can you build a car without knowing how to drive? How can you build a car without knowing how to play with the shift, with the gears? You know, how can you build a car in the first place? I mean, it takes passion, you know. A Congolese crafts an amphibious plane from metal scraps. A plane that floats on water. A plane that was meant to, you know, help his society, his local society, sell their fish, you know. A Malian and a Kenyan turns plastic bottles into a working engine part. Try topping that, Silicon Valley, or try topping that from wherever you are. I mean, I think some things can only be found in Africa. What do you think? Leave a comment down below. And when none of these inventions actually work, it doesn't change just one person's life. It becomes a neighborhood's pride. Suddenly, the same people who warned you about dying in a terrible crash are lining up for selfies with you, you know, with your plywood craft, with your scraps, pretending that they supported you all along. I don't know if it's the hypocrisy, because first it begins with the skepticism, and then comes the admiration. Like for Joseph, who flew a few feet away from the ground, it began with the skepticism, but at the end of the day, he proved us wrong. He tried. And even though 99% of African inventors don't get to that certain level where their craft lifts off the ground, especially their aircraft lifts off the ground, for Joseph it was different. It was miraculous. It was miraculous. Because look at a chopper like this. Do you think it can ever go anywhere? It can't. It obviously can't. Yeah. And sometimes the planes out here are crazy, like, because look at this dashboard, for example. It looks like it was trimmed with a machete.
Was it that you copied this idea, or how did you get this idea to design the?
Like, this is a car dashboard that is supposed to be in a functional helicopter. Yeah. Look at even the blades. They are basically ceiling fans. sometimes African inventors, even though they're using scraps, because I know you can find a ceiling fan among the scraps. Sometimes they're just kind of jokers, you know.
Touch aeroplane since why I born. I know touch aeroplane. I see it where they fly. Okay. Again, I bought a how do you call it, that small one where they sell for market.
Toys.
That's a toy. Okay. I bought.
This is also another dashboard. It looks like a Soviet Union era dashboard that was made in a chopper called the Zimcopter. The Zimcopter was built in Uganda.
Raped right and center, and the government is not even recognizing me.
And mind you, after this inventor tried to make his plane after countless day and nights, his government rejected him. And I think this is the best dashboard I've ever seen when it comes to African planes with dashboards. This is the best. I think he tried. I think I'd give this a 7/10. What should you give it? Comment down below. So why does it suck to be an African inventor? It's simple. The odds are heavily stacked against you. You know, even Mount Kilimanjaro gets jealous. And for those of you who don't know, Mount Kilimanjaro is the second tallest mountain in the world. And also, you've got no budget, no institutional support, and often, even the basic components needed to test your ideas don't exist. You might be building a drone, but it feels more like building a coffin. From your own optimism. But here's the twist. The same reason why it sucks are the very same that make African inventors more fearless, most stubborn, and arguably the most creative human beings on the planet. And that's according to me. I don't know about you. When you grow up seeing cars being welded together from scrap, planes taking shape from someone's chicken coop, and electric circuits patched together using rubber bands and hopes, sometimes even plastic bags, you realize genius isn't born in luxury. Yeah, it's forged in hardships. So the next time you stumble upon a funny looking plywood car driving past you or an aircraft that looks more like a modern arts installation, don't laugh too hard, because behind that looking odd machine, someone took on gravity, took on poverty and bureaucracy, and still came out swinging. Being an inventor in Africa, it's less Shark Tank and more Survivor Engineering Edition. But for those bold enough to take the leap, the limit is only the sky, or sometimes the nearest potholes, because most African roads are pothole laden. Anyway, share with your friends and leave a like if you like the video. Also consider subscribing, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.